Today I'm joined by Creso Pharma's Strategic Advisor, Bruce Linton, fresh off the company executing an agreement to acquire Halucenex, a fully integrated provider of psilocybin and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy, aiming to revolutionise the treatment of mental health issues. Bruce, thanks very much for joining me today. Now, before we go into depth on Creso's most recent acquisition, can you give me a bit of background on yourself and your career in the cannabis and psychedelic-inspired medicine space?
Sure. So Bruce Linton, I guess, I got involved in the space about 8 years ago. And I got involved because I like to go to areas where I see public policy changing from really dumb rules, really like archaic rules, to progressive opportunities and being at the front of that wave. And so I started what became Canopy Growth, became about a little more than a 20 billion US dollar market cap, had about $6 billion of capital invested. And I started it not because I thought I needed to own a cannabis company. I started because I thought a lot of people want cannabis and the government's going to regulate it. And we're seeing that wave take the world. And so that led me about 2 years ago to get really active in what we'll call psychedelics. But really what we're talking about are molecules that have a direct effect on people's perception of things, that these molecules exist. And for the most part, they do not cause, the death events that we see with a lot of other molecules. And they've just been regulated terribly. And so the world's changing and they want better answers to mental health. And so I think the acquisition, the timing, everything about this space is just coming up. But I'm a bit of a nerd. I like public policy that's going from bad to good. I mean, you want to catch that wave.
Okay, Bruce. So after such an accomplished career as a founder and a CEO, what attracted you to the Creso Pharma opportunity?
Well, there's a lot of cheerleaders, and cheerleading and making noise is important. But what I like with Creso is there's actually content, science, an effort to comprehend how to create things that cause the effect you want. And so I first encountered them as it relates to their animal care products. I said, well, why would I be so excited about animal care? Well, there's been access to cannabis programs that exist for more than 20 years. So if you're a human, a doctor in Canada starting in 2001, 20 years ago, could say you can have medical access. That's great if you're a human, but if you're a dog, there's no program, yet there's an effectiveness that we know exists. And so this is one of those situations where usually we start testing things on mice and then maybe dogs and then humans get them. Instead, in the case of cannabinoids, we've been testing them on humans forever. And now maybe, just maybe, you can practically give them to your animal. And so there's this massive opportunity that's both backwards and upside down. And I thought that, really Creso had nailed how to look at it and work on it. And then the more you dig in, there's an aggressiveness of the company, a looking to win. So those are good combinations.
Thanks, Bruce. Now, to delve into Halucenex and its operations further, we're also chatting to President and CEO of Halucenex, Bill Fleming. Bill, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you, Alex.
Now, Bill, before we go into details around Halucenex and its operations, can you give listeners some background on your experience and other companies that you've worked with during your career?
Thank you. I've been a seasoned executive for about the last 25 years. Been fortunate to have worked in many verticals. I most recently sit as the chairman for a cannabis company in Canada, which is publicly traded. And I also am the chairman for a junior mining exploration company in Canada as well.
All right, Bill. So what really excites you about the psychedelic space and why did you decide to create Halucenex?
As a veteran, I've been seeing the way that the industry is moving over the last few years, especially on the cannabis side. We saw that therapeutic side of medicinal cannabis has taken off, and there's some great medicinal benefits to it. What we are finding, though, is that there are a lot of individuals, whether it's people that are suffering from PTSD, anxiety, depression. Cannabis is going so far. However, what we're starting to find is that psychedelics is actually becoming very integral to the next wave of psychedelics. So as a result, we have people in the industry that are veterans who are suffering from treatment-resistant depression. And we saw this as a great opportunity to be involved. And if there's any opportunity to get and to move forward with a solution that improves on the well-being and the health of veterans and first responders, we're certainly excited to be helpful in that particular area.
So can you talk us through your vision for the company and where do you see it going in the next 5 years?
That's a pretty open-ended question. Obviously, with the things that are going on in the industry right now, especially with COVID-19, the pandemic that's out there, You're starting to see an increase in more mental health patients. We're starting to see things associated with anxiety. There's such a diversified group of individuals that are out there that are suffering from mental illness. What we do see is the opportunity to come up with solutions that will serve that particular market. From our perspective, we've been very fortunate in that we were one of the first companies to move forward and putting together our own laboratory. We have our own clinic. We're in a position right now where we're actually very close to submitting a phase 2 clinical trial, and that will be for treatment-resistant depression for veterans suffering from PTSD. But at the same time, we're also looking at the botanical of the plant itself, where we're looking at the novel compounds of extraction and looking at the entourage effect of all the molecules and how that can compare against the synthetic side. So we're covering all the bases, and we're looking forward to doing future drug development and, more importantly, having a better understanding of the molecules, and we have the ability to deliver. And that makes us one of the very few companies in Canada that actually has that ability to do it.
Now, the company has just merged with ASX-listed entity Creso Pharma. Can you talk us through what attracted you to this idea, and what do you think the main benefits will be for the group?
Well, I think that Creso certainly has the pedigree. If you look at the individuals that are there, there's a very large focus on pharmaceutical. The individuals come from a long lineage of being able to bring products to market. I'm a firm believer that Creso's hidden gem is its distribution. Distribution is very hard to get and it's very costly to achieve. From our perspective, we're looking at future drug development. And one of the key things that Creso does have is a very strong clinical team. And they have the ability to assist us in that regard as we move forward. And more importantly, as we develop our brand and our products, we'll be at a fine position that we can take that product and start distributing it throughout their channels. So they've got some great relationships, both at the academic side, and Switzerland certainly is a huge place for pharmaceutical. So we're pretty bullish about the whole relationship, and we certainly see a lot of synergy with what they've been able to accomplish and where they're heading.
And just finally, Bill, it's obviously an exciting market, and I note several of your peers are trading at a $2 billion market cap. So what's your go-to market strategy here?
Yes, a lot of companies right now that are playing in this space, they've got some great market caps. The challenge is that they don't have what I call the right stuff. Either have a license, they don't have a supply agreement, and they don't have a focus. Sure, they've raised some capital, they've got a great science team, yet the challenge is in making it happen. The biggest differentiator for Halucenex is that we have everything under one roof, which means that we control our destiny. We have a long-term supply of synthetic psilocybin, which allows us to conduct a phase 2 clinical trial to demonstrate the efficacy. Science and efficacy is going to be an absolute for this industry, especially when you're starting to deal with companies in Canada and, more importantly, with Veteran Affairs and looking at the treatment programs associated with PTSD, which is going to be a huge market that has to be dealt with. What we have is the ability to have everything from a science perspective, from an extraction perspective, from looking at the compounds, all in one central area. And that is our biggest differentiator, in that what we understand is how we're going to bring this thing to market. If we're in a position that we can create our own synthetic psilocybin, also be looking at the entourage effect on the botanical side, having a phase 2 clinical trial in the works that we're anticipating starting within the next 4 to 6 weeks. All of these things lead us that much faster to bringing this thing to market. And to bring things to market, you're going to need the efficacy as well as the ability to construct and be able to look at the product itself. I mean, our license permits us to 10 kilograms worth of product. Well, that's 10 million milligrams. That's a tremendous amount of product that we'll have to start looking at moving out into the marketplace. And having the ability to understand the product, play with the products, and start to manage and productize gives us the ability to hit the market first, which will then allow us to achieve faster revenue streams. That's our biggest differentiation.
Thanks, Bill. Now, if I could just go back to Bruce for a second. Now, Bruce, based on your experience in the space, what kind of synergies do you see between Halucenex and Creso Pharma, and how will this lead to both companies creating a diversified pharmaceutical company?
Well, I think what's the point of all this? The point is, if you happen to have, say, a family member that's suffering through a terrible structural depressive method that they just can't get out of, they've tried all kinds of different methods. If what Creso can do is contribute across variable combinations, a way out, a way up. What you're going to say is thanks. That's terrific. And so I think what they're doing is they're looking at the big picture and they're saying, when someone's not doing well or an animal's maybe not doing well, there are paths to I'll call it a positive perspective, good health. And I think Creso's got the open mind in the big picture, which means that they can actually look for the solution and not be bounded by, oh, is that a cannabinoid? Oh, is that something that lands in the psychedelics? No, it's what's the most effective path to the outcome. And you know what people buy over a long time? They buy outcomes. They don't buy ingredients.
And just finally, Bruce, now the global psychedelic market is obviously emerging, and as you'd be aware, and you alluded to it just before, it's growing at a pretty rapid rate. Where do you see it going in the near future?
Well, pandemics cause a lot of stress, don't they? Mental health, big topic. And so the whole notion of us being open and willing to discuss the state of how you perceive things and what are the best remedies means that there's going to be an honest conversation that continues to get louder. And it's going to be about the use of psychedelics to deal with all sorts of, I'll call it, challenges society's recognizing, but they've been there and they're getting to be more and more specific and large as part of our cohort. So I just think it's only the beginning. Science will lead to outcomes. And part of the point of the acquisition is this is a science platform proving it in humans. And so you know what that is going to be. If you lead early in that, you start developing brands, outcomes, products. You know, people start using your name to describe the solution, not the ingredient.
Thanks, Bruce. Thoroughly enjoyed you joining me today, and look, really appreciate you giving your insights, and hopefully we'll be able to chat soon. Thanks for your time.
Oh, that's great. From opposite sides of the world, quite literally.
Thanks very much.